Hello, everyone, and welcome to the IOCDF Faith and OCD Roundtable. We are so excited to be with you tonight with two amazing guests who are going to speak from the clinical perspective and from the lived experience perspective, and just from the human perspective of what it looks like to really talk about OCD and talk about mental health in faith communities, what it means to feel seen and known in our faith communities. We're so excited to have all of you here with us and just to really dive in. So as folks come in, feel free to, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. Are y'all hearing feedback? Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, sorry, I think it was on my end. But yeah, as folks come in, would love to have you say hello, to let us know where you're watching from, and would love to plug all of you into the conversation. And I see Nathan. Hi, Nathan, and hi, Amy. So good to see both of you. So before we jump in, want to say that this live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please work with your provider or contact a local clinician. You can use the IOCDF's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find-help to locate a trained clinician near you. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. If you're in crisis or if you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You can also access online at www.988lifeline.org. Go to your local emergency room or call 911. And finally, we want to create a safe space. We want to be kind and we want to be respectful to everyone, because at the end of the day, we are all here to support one another. But I note that this is being recorded and broadcast on several social media platforms. So please keep that in mind as you comment and as you interact with one another. We do want you to be here and asking questions, and we want you to advocate and support one another. But just want you to be mindful of being kind in that process. And we know that you all will, because this is such a supportive, awesome community. And I see this community pouring in as we talk. I know Amy is saying hi to Val, and then I see Spence and Beth and Linguini, and excited to have so many of y'all plug in. Before we jump into our topic tonight, I want to have each of our amazing just humans here with us tonight introduce themselves and share a little bit about the work that they do and what they bring. So Michelle, I would love to start with you and would love to just hear a little bit about your work in the OCD space, in the faith space, and why this topic's important to you, and just a little bit about who you are, if you could share with us.
Okay. Hopefully my voice doesn't get too gravelly today, but I've got my tea here with me. So I'm Michelle Whitkin, and I'm a psychologist. I'm in an independent private practice in a little area called Santa Clarita, California. It's north of Los Angeles, and I primarily work with folks with OCD, little kids all the way on up. Do a lot of free support groups for various people within the OCD community. That's really like my big love, is supporting the community. And my connection to OCD is really personal. I have an adult child with OCD. That was really my introduction to it back when he was a little person. But I came to find out that I actually have multiple family members with OCD. And so it just is something very, very close to my heart. And then in terms of faith and OCD, it's interesting because I never really thought a lot about myself being connected to the faith and OCD community, although I was constantly giving people in my own faith community information about OCD. So I guess I was involved in a long time for doing that. Recently, I found myself talking more about how OCD and Jewish identity can intersect. And I just work with people of so many different faith backgrounds, and it certainly has impacted their OCD. And it's been important for me to be supportive of people's faith as we work through their OCD. So that's me.
Thank you, Michelle. So glad that you're here and thankful for the awesome work that you've been doing and that you continue to do and the ways that your work continues to evolve in really beautiful ways. And Val, I feel like Val, you need no introduction. You already had folks in here saying, "Oh, it's Val." So we're so excited to have you, and would love. Yeah, see, there's there's Matt, hi Katie and Val and Michelle. Val is such an important part of this IOCDF and OCD advocacy family and has really shaped so much of the work that we do around faith and OCD. And Val would love to hear a little bit about you.
Thank you, and hi to everybody. My name is Valerie Andrews. I got my diagnosis of OCD in 2011 at the ripe old age of 54, which really caused me to really want to advocate for earlier diagnosis. Um, I got involved with the International OCD Foundation in 2017, which inspired me to start my own nonprofit, Miss Mabel Sparrows, which is a nonprofit geared for women of age, faith, and color, but open to everyone. Miss Mabel was the first person I knew or thought I knew was crazy as a 12-year-old child, and I avoided her at all costs. And it took God showing me that I became a Miss Mabel myself in order to appreciate who she was and what she went through. And the sparrows come from the part that, as a Christian and a woman of faith, that it's important to remember that uh, God knows everything that goes on in the lives of sparrows. So of course He knows who we are and whose we are. And so that is kind of where my work is focused at now, to move that agenda on into the churches, where we can bridge the gap of communication between two communities that I love, the communities of faith and the communities of OCD. So that's kind of where I'm at in my stage of life right now.
Thank you, Val, and thank you for the beautiful work that you do. I was sharing with Val beforehand. I have my sparrow from her always right here, and I'm always looking at it and just thinking about the amazing work that she does. And just Val, I would love to stay with you for a few minutes and ask if you could, kind of going off of what you began to share with us, if you could share a moment in your faith journey when you felt truly seen and supported when navigating OCD. And that really relates to our topic tonight of what does it even look like to feel seen in our faith communities with OCD?
Well, I really thought about the question, especially when you said fully understood. And I think uh, it was around 5 years ago that I really felt for the first time that someone saw me within the church body outside of just being somebody that didn't know what was going on. And I remember it distinctly because prior to that, like say, growing up as a Christian, especially in a Black church, there's so much pressure. I shouldn't say pressure, or tradition that goes along with being in the body of Christ. So all of that kind of came into play for me as a person of faith. But I was teaching Sunday school, and in the middle of Sunday school, and the at that time the church body I was at was smaller, so it was everybody that was in the room. And so I do believe this is the first time I've ever had a panic or anxiety attack. But I was in the middle of giving this lesson when I started hearing, "You're not worthy to be teaching these people," that I was a hypocrite. And as much as I kept trying to keep going with the class, I just froze and I just lost it. I had what I believe was my first panic attack. Now, prior to that, because I was in a safe environment, I had been really sharing openly with uh, my church body of what was going on. And I was in my newly walk of being diagnosed. So I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge myself. But I remember I just looked at um, another member and asked them to take over my class, and I walked out. But my first lady of the church, who was also my friend, followed behind me. And I can't tell you, I was so shameful that this was happening, because I was getting all these images too of Christ being on the cross in his full nakedness. And I didn't know how to deal with that, because here I am teaching, but I was having all these images, which was new to me. I had never had experienced anything like that. And so I'm sharing with my first lady, and she just really put it in perspective, like, oh, so you've seen Jesus? What he looked like? I don't know. She made me realize that it was the OCD. And even at that time, I didn't have much knowledge, but I think I felt seen because there was no judgment. I felt it was pure love. It was pure understanding. And it gave me because I wanted to say, I'm never going to teach again. And it was kind of like, no, you're not, but that was the first time that I really fully said I felt seen as a person, and not just a person with OCD that didn't know how to get rid of, if that makes sense. So that was 5 or 6 years ago, but that was the very first time.
Val, that's huge. And thank you for just sharing the intensity of that I think so many people with OCD experience when it's latching on to the things that are the most important to us, about our faith and about who we are as teachers or as leaders in the church, and images, even relating to Jesus or to anything that's significant. Emily says, what a story. I'm in tears. So familiar. So thank you, Val. And just what you shared, to have somebody respond, especially in a faith space, without judgment, and to make you feel seen and like, okay, it's OCD, it's a thought, that's not you. What a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And life-changing.
Life-changing.
Yeah. Because once again, like I said, it was new for me. I had never, ever felt anything like that. And going back to where I said culturally being supposedly anchored and so deep in the church, to have even that thought, and then to have on the other side someone telling me I'm not worthy, it all could have had a different course if I didn't feel seen that day. So I'm grateful.
Amazing. Thank you, Val. Well, I'd love to then shift with this beautiful conversation over to Michelle, and to ask, in your work with clients or just in your own life or with family, what does it mean to feel seen in a faith community? And why is that so important when we're thinking about mental health or this OCD journey?
First, like, Valerie, your story is just so beautiful, and it's so touching. And what you said about being heard without judgment, like how important is that? Because I think just going to the notion of when you're dealing with your own mental health journey, right? There's so much judgment that we put on ourselves when we're struggling with our own emotional well-being. And to have somebody, it's kind of true I think this is true whether it's in a faith community or whether it's in any community. If somebody can really, really listen to what it is that we're going through and what we're seeing, and to listen in a way that makes us feel like, I hear you, and it's really okay that you're sharing this. This might be uncomfortable, but it's really okay. And I think when we've all had the experience of somebody coming in with judgment about who we are or what we're experiencing. I mean, I know plenty of my clients have shared, whether it's in their faith community or elsewhere, what they're going through. And when they get judgment about, ew, why would you think that? Or, well, you just need to do this better. Or, anything like that, like, it can really shut people down emotionally and make them feel like it's really, them that's faulted. But when somebody listens to you, like, open-hearted, and just really, like, puts the agenda aside, doesn't come in with their answer already, there can be just this big sense of, okay, like, I'm human, I'm okay, I'm worthy, I can be here. And I think that's what provides opportunity for growth and healing.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to get emotional with these two amazing women here, because this is just it's such a such a beautiful thing to be able to show up as we are, exactly as we are in the situation. And like Michelle said, not just in a faith community, in general, to be able to show up anywhere and to be embraced fully without judgment. And unfortunately, that isn't always what happens in the world or in our faith communities when it comes to OCD, or so many other things. And Val, wanted to ask you, what misconception or misconceptions have you heard in faith communities or in your faith community about OCD, and how have you responded to that? Or I always also like to ask, or how would you like to respond? Because sometimes we don't respond in the moment the way that we think later that we would like to respond.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, I've heard so many because I've been on walk a little while, but I think for me, couple of them, I'm too blessed to be stressed. That in the Black church a couple of years ago became really, really the common thread. They were wearing T-shirts and the whole 9 yards. And here I am, stressed beyond belief. So that was one that was really hard to hear. I'm too blessed to be stressed. Now I say I'm blessed despite my stress. Also, I think one of the most harmful ones are I need to increase my faith. I need to pray that spirit out of me. Uh, but I had to kind of shift my thinking. And I think for me, because words have consequences and that cut really deep. But I kind of had to shift my thinking, or I truly believe that God showed me I had to shift my thinking by sending me to therapy so I could see myself. Because part of that, I think for so long that I don't know if it was unconsciously, but I held the church accountable for not knowing how I was feeling, despite the fact that I didn't know I had OCD, but somewhere I got lost there because uh, they're the body of Christ, or their faith should be bigger for whatever reason, that I was holding them accountable for something I didn't even know I had. And I think unconsciously, because I think I was just had such a need to be heard and seen and loved, and didn't know how to go to that step, that I put it off on them. And it took me a long time to kind of come to terms with that. And then nowadays, the last couple of years, like I said, when I started this journey of wanting to bridge the gap between the communities, I believe God told me that I just want you to start the conversation, period. But once again, I wanted to do more than start the conversation. I wanted to direct it, dissect it. You heard of the song, Jesus Take the Wheel? Well, I was trying to take the wheel and pick what lane I was in. But he kind of had to put me back and let me know that ultimately he's directing everything. And I think that's why I'm so grateful that I had the courage, because for some people it takes courage to go outside of the body of church to seek help, because I truly believe, like I said, he had to show me all of me in order to help somebody else, because I was so caught up on telling people what I wanted them to hear as opposed to what Jesus wanted them to know. And once I kind of got that out of my head, that I'm accountable for my own OCD. The body of the church is a plus. It really has helped me not to fall prey to feeling that I'm too stressed, or I need to pray it away, or I'm not good enough, all of that stuff. So now I'm able to kind of take it and not be so defensive about it when somebody tell me, oh, you're too stressed to be blessed. Girl, I'm stressed. I'm blessed despite my stress. Those sort of things has really helped me, but I've heard some of everything. And it's just because the lack of knowledge.
It's so much this lack of knowledge, which I know you're trying to shift and change. And I love those responses, and I'm watching folks really resonate in the comments. And I wanted to go back to Beth mentioned at 717, and Val, I wanted to ask you, she mentioned how challenging it is when folks are judged for struggling with their mental health versus kind of physical health, like in a hospital. And I'm trying to remember, because you always talk about the casserole. I'm going to get it wrong. So I want to have you say it.
Yes. What really helped me too, I read this book by Amy Simpson. It's called Troubled Minds, I think. And it's really her, I believe she's a minister also, but it's her take on, her mother had schizophrenia and how the church reacted to her mom. And she says, when you're in the church, if you got a cold, you get a casserole. If you have a baby, you get a casserole. If you have surgery, you get a casserole. You get a casserole for everything but mental illness. And that is so true. And that is a tough place to be, especially when you're seeing it. We feel like we're just not part of the body. But yes, so I also remember to tell people too, to remember, bring us a casserole. Let us know, we have got to change that narrative that OCD is any different than high blood pressure. Or when I broke my foot, I got all kind of cards. When I had the breakdown, nothing. So yes, but Amy Simpson.
Amy Simpson, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important, and what you did, especially in this feeling seen conversation, because if you actually get a casserole for struggling with your mental health the way that you would with anything, what a sign of being seen. But we don't often hear that in faith communities. And thank you so much to folks who are sharing in the chat. Absolutely, Amy, often even medical providers don't fully understand mental health concerns. And Phyllis, I'm so sorry for what your pastor once said to you. That is incredibly challenging, and hope that you feel seen and known as we have this conversation tonight. And as we do, I want to go back over to Michelle. As we think about these misconceptions, how do you try to gently correct these misconceptions about OCD within religious or cultural frameworks? What does that look like in your work?
Well, the first thing I do is I give the individual a casserole.
Please do. I hope so. Every time now, Michelle, you're expected to give a casserole.
I am going to get a subscription to the Casserole of the Week Club. And no, I just have to go back and say that I resonate so much with that. And because, our family is no stranger to mental health issues. And when we've had some severe mental health crises, I remember thinking like how badly I could have used somebody to have bought us a meal or something, and to feel alone. And I've had friends who, since I have shared publicly about some of the things we've gone through, who've reached out to me to share that they wish the same kinds of things, that they would be more acknowledged when they're struggling or when their family is struggling. So it's interesting because I think most people are curious. Most people actually want to know information, and sometimes I just saw something about cookies. Now we're on cookies in the chat. Yes. So I tend to believe that most people, if they come in with misconceptions, that it's from they just don't know, and maybe they don't know what to ask. But when I hear people maybe gallantly commenting on something that I know is a misconception about OCD, or even just coming in saying something that they think is true but isn't, I'll try to kind of come in and join about it. So this has definitely happened when I've spoken with some of the faith leaders that some of my clients have worked with. We're like, well, isn't that kind of like this, or aren't they cleaning all the time? Or, and clearly they just don't know. I mean, they understand what's in their wheelhouse, what they do well. And just like I would go to them when I need more information about what they're really knowledgeable about, I'll just try to gently say, like, that's what a lot of people think. That's a really common misconception. And actually, and then I'll try to share a little tidbit that hooks them, something that, and I can't think of a specific example right now, but I just love to throw out little examples that are just not really well known. And then you get, really? Yeah. And then they like tell me more. And so I try to engage more in a conversation. And I also just try to talk really common language with people, about this. And that, that tends to help. So really just coming in this sort of like conversational way that invites people into conversation. And then what's really interesting that's happened from some of those conversations is, and I've had like rabbis or ministers who've reached out to me later and like, I think that this person has OCD, and and so like they start to find things, and that's really exciting when they they really had a nice conversation and they start to pick it up, and then they really want to help, and they're getting people to the right place.
Those are some of the neatest, I think, conversations, right? When then you start to see recognition and kind of knowledge spread and folks coming back. I always think about this feels like the most random story, but this reminded me of it. I was on a cruise. Ethan and I were on our initial honeymoon on a cruise, which we later in the cruise got COVID and got quarantined. But this was before that. It was over the holidays. And I'm a Protestant minister, but there's a Catholic priest on board. And I always introduce myself to all of the clergy because I get excited about talking to different clergy. And we were chatting kind of early in the trip, and he asked what I did. And I talked about, well, now I used to work in school chaplaincy. Now I do work around faith, OCD, and scrupulosity. He's like, I kind of know scrupulosity, but what does that have to do with OCD? So I got into this whole, what is it actually? So a couple of days later into the cruise, like slightly before my quarantine, he came up to me and said, so somebody last night after a service I was doing on the cruise came back again and again to confess. And I think it might be the scrupulosity thing that you were talking about. Can we like potentially plug in with some resources? And I think those are just the neatest conversations where then folks start to recognize and want to, I just think it's the neatest thing. It's the neatest thing.
Yeah, it's always exciting when you see that you impact somebody and that then they're impacting more people and more people.
Just so neat. And it's not what I think of on a cruise. And it's like, whoa, even there. It's just, but thank you, Michelle. And just these conversations, and you started to answer this, but I'd love to ask you, how do you kind of cultural and religious traditions, or how do you see these shaping the ways that OCD is expressed or discussed within communities?
So, you mean like other people's perceptions?
Yeah.
Or, okay, that's a good question, because I was thinking about it a little bit more in terms of like, how does the person who has OCD, end up,
or that too. That's also, yeah. I think either way.
I want to try to think about it both ways. Okay, so I'm going to think about it the way that I understood it at first, but then I'm going to see if I can think about it in the other way too. I was thinking about just how OCD just always latches on to whatever we love and we care about, right? And if if you are really, really connected to your religious traditions, right, and your observance, then of course, just like anything else, OCD is going to wrap around that, right? And then you may see the exact thing that you might do, like you might go in, you might do your prayers, right? But you might do them in a more extensive, over the top way, right? Something else though that can happen too is, so like whether you're, you know, religiously involved in your faith community, or whether you kind of adapted some of the things in terms of a cultural way, you can, I was just thinking about this tradition today. So in Judaism, there's a lot said about gossip. Like, gossip is a no-no, okay, which I think it is for many traditions, but there are so many things about it. And whether you are practicing in a religious observant way, or whether you kind of adopted this as like, culturally, we do not gossip, right? Your OCD could wrap around more like, wait, did I gossip? Did I say bad things about people? Did I do that? Oh my God, you know, and you get caught up in that reviewing in your head and going back over situations and being really careful about what you say. But I think when you take a look at, if you've got a misconception about what obsessive compulsive disorder is, right, then you can have people in a community talking about this, you know, this mental health issue in a way that doesn't apply to what it really is. You know, the whole I'm OCD thing, that happens in faith communities too, right? And it being, you know, thought that the person who has OCD is just like too persnickety, you know, and that maybe they need to let go of some of their control and that sort of thing, not understanding that this is a mental health issue, right? And making assumptions about if somebody comes in and they say, well, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. In fact, I remember a young man who was going through bar mitzvah, and his rabbi did not understand what OCD meant, right? And assumed that it had to do with cleanliness and checking, when actually it was about scrupulosity for this person, right? And so this when a rabbi is going in without proper information, you know, thinking and wanting to care, right, but not recognizing that what the individual really needed was to not be overly reassured, and to be taught kind of appropriate ways to do things, not the overextended way that they were doing things. So with some education, then, you know, that particular faith leader was able to change their approach, but they were trying to be helpful, doing what they thought, you know, but acting on misconception about what OCD was.
You're making me sit here and think too. I just think this is such a beautiful and just helpful conversation. I really do. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for that. And Val, I mean, you've kind of already, as we shift over a little bit, you've already kind of answered this for us, but I would still love to ask, in case there's others that come up for you, of something that a faith leader, a community member has done that made you feel safe or understood. And I know you told us that beautiful story earlier, which just already hit on that in so many ways. But I wonder if there's other things that come to mind for you.
Yes, I think most recently, and this is my pastor now, who's been my pastor for a couple of years following the death of his father, and he's a younger guy in his 40s. But for me, I think last month I was trying to kick off my Miss Mabel Sparrows to the community with, you know, this whole thing about bringing the communities together. And my pastor showed up. And it was at the park. It was during Juneteenth celebration, and he showed up. And not only did he show up, you know, as a way to support, he went out and he was passing out flyers and talking to people and the whole 9 yards. And I really felt like special, you know, like, oh, that's what a church should do. But one other thing he said to me a couple of years prior that really stuck was during the lesson, He said, what good is a saint or a believer without empathy and compassion? And when I think about that, when a body or church leader or even church members have empathy and compassion, they don't have to have understanding. They don't have to believe what you believe, but it takes away that shame, I think, and then it allows the person to feel safer or inclusive. Because I know for me, I sat many times on the pew feeling like I wasn't part of the flock. You know, you just feel that you're falling short. So that has really, I've hung on to those words, and I try to remember it myself to just have empathy and compassion. And that's the one thing I love about this particular group, because it goes across all faith lines. It has nothing to do with what religion you believe, or where you stand in your spiritual walk, but simply being able to empathize with somebody could be life-saving. I know it has for me. So that has really stuck with one way that I've seen support, in ways that I try to mimic myself, uh, because we're not perfect ourselves. I know I fall short and go off the ends all the time, but I try to remember those two things. And I'm grateful that OCD has taught me those two things: empathy and compassion.
Thank you. Empathy and compassion. Thank you, Val. Thank you. We have some more awesome questions for these wonderful humans, but I see some great questions in the chat that I want to go over to as well. And Michelle, I'm gonna throw this to you. And Charles asked, why does OCD latch on to what's nearest or dearest to the person? And I think it's something we talk about all the time, right? It like latches on to what's the most important. But I wonder, how do we explain that?
Well, I guess like so many things OCD, we can't say this is the absolute reason why, but well,
you can't tell us for sure. You're not certain, Michelle?
In the past, I would have wanted to, but if you think about it this way, like if you don't care about something at all, then you can't really get triggered about it. Like, my husband gets really excited about certain topics, and if he hears something about that, man, it's going to grab his attention. But me, and I really love like doing certain activities, and like I love doing aerial fitness, right? And my husband, like if something came up about that, he would like go right over his head, right? But it would catch my attention. So why what's near? It's because it's what you care about. If you don't care about, it's not going to grab your attention. So that's the basic and most simple.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And you're right. It's like if you don't care about it, it's just going to float in and float out. We're not going to get stuck on it. I think that's so awesome. Thank you. Or not awesome. It's horrible when we're experiencing it, because I know, like mine, it also gets latched onto what's so awesome is the wrong word. Yeah, Amy, I think we want to protect what we value. So of course, it's going to latch onto what we value. And I think something so common about all of us who navigate OCD is we tend to say, oh, I would be okay with being stuck on anything except the thing that I'm stuck on right now, because it is the thing that's most important to us.
Exactly.
And I also see over here, Zach at 7:30, and I wonder, Val or Michelle, if you have any thoughts about this. How much of the stereotypes or judgment of mental illness within faith communities is a consequence of religious thinking in dichotomies, or black and white, or all or nothing thinking, like evil versus good, or pure versus impure? I wonder if y'all have any thoughts about that. I have a couple thoughts, but I want to throw this out to the group too.
Well, I think that can be true, especially the stereotypes and the judgmental part, because I think oftentimes on both sides, we draw that line in the sand. I believe this, it's a sin. You don't need to be over here with these therapists, blah, blah. And then on the other end, it's just the opposite, whatever they might believe. And I think sometimes like I said, we're just afraid to have the conversation, you know. And I find in the church body, mental illness is almost like a dirty word, you know, it could be sometimes. And then on the side over here, saying anything about Jesus or religion could be a dirty word too. And so we have to kind of find that balance. But I think that's part of why we find ourselves in this place so often with the black and white thinking. It's just because we've been stuck and we haven't had this conversation, you know, in many, many years. It's a hard conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's such a hard conversation, Val, and it's so important, like you noted. And I always think about, I think things can feel very much like it's this or this, and kind of like we talk about OCD often, where there's kind of all or nothing thinking in OCD. I think sometimes we see this in faith communities. And one of the things, I was doing a training for our clergy last week, and that I was talking about, which everyone always gets nervous when I bring this up. And I always say, no, it's not abandoning your faith. But I always say, just like we talk about psychological flexibility, there's theological flexibility. And it doesn't mean abandoning those things that you care so deeply about, but it's sometimes finding the gray and not seeing things in that same all or nothing manner, and being able to recognize, oof, we can pray and engage in our practices, and we can engage in therapy. And that maybe that can be something spiritual too. And what does it look like to hold all of this together at the same time?
And I was just thinking, you know, I think it was maybe Phyllis who had commented about, you know, well, what did you do wrong? I think that's who it was, right? And I think, you know, not all religious communities are the same. Some are. Thank you for nodding, Valerie. That makes me feel really validated, you know, because you know, some are very, very, very open and very mental health supportive, and some are like, it must be a failing of yours and your own spiritual observance, right? So I think it really can depend on the community. Sometimes it's just, we didn't know and we want to be educated.
I think that's so important and I think I'll be honest. This is always when I started doing work in this area and with scrupulosity. I grew up in communities where we talked about mental health all the time, and I shifted to work specifically in Georgia and in different denominational spaces where that wasn't necessarily the case. And I was really, really surprised. And I think it was really kind of jarring for me because I'd always talked about it. And then I felt like I was in a space for the first time that I couldn't talk about it. And it was, what does this look like? And I think it can be so challenging when there's so many different experiences in different religious and spiritual spaces, and just want everybody here, regardless of the space that you're in or the openness in your community, to know that you are worthy of getting the help and support that you need, and you are worthy of doing that and still connecting with your faith community in really beautiful ways. I think this also goes along with Emily's question at 739. And Val, I'd love to ask you, she said, how do you advise sharing your experience with OCD with your faith community as someone who's not a leader or an expert?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I know I found myself in that spot over the years many times. And sometimes I just couldn't help it. But I started trying to be more conscious, like when I would go to Bible study, and there'd be prayer requests. It'd be like, can we pray for the mental health community? You know, little things like that. I kind of started off. And then I just tried to be more open as much as I could with talking about it. I encouraged my pastor at the time, like, hey, can you do a sermon? You know, it's mental health month in May. Can you do a sermon besides the one about the man being uh, possessed by demons? You know, that's the only mental health sermon I've ever heard. Has always been a negative kind of one. So little things like that. And then when I started opening up, people started asking me little questions. So I would do stuff like, okay, well, maybe we could talk. Let's go have coffee, or, refer a book. I never tried to really force anything on anybody, but it took a little bit of time to kind of figure out how bold or how to hold back when it comes to those situations, because sometimes, you know, we either all in or we don't know what to say. But I just found being yourself, however it comes out, uh, you know, it comes out, and don't be afraid, because I always go, the answer could be either yes or no, you know, but it's okay to ask. Uh, but just little things. And eventually, I think I asked my pastor if I could put some pamphlets out. That was kind of like the easier way too, you know. But little things. There's no wrong or right answer, I don't think.
No, I think all of those are beautiful. And every little thing, and Emily, want you to hear this, every little thing, whatever's comfortable or feels safe in your space, makes such a difference and makes someone feel seen. It really, really does. I also, before I shift back over to Michelle, Val, I think this is the most intense, important question of the night from Zach at 7:45, which is, where can I sign up to get casseroles for my OCD, PTSD, or general anxiety disorder?
Oh, that is so cute. Where can I sign? Hey, well, you're signed up here, you know.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a service we can start.
Yes.
He can start. He can start his own casserole deliveries.
I love that. That's like our
maybe cookies.
I want to, for at the end, I'm going to talk about the Faith and OCD conference. I want y'all, I'm not promising this because I don't think we can actually do this, but I want to get like everyone's address so a casserole shows up at their door at the start of the virtual conference. That'd be awesome. Just love it. Love it. Oh, Mary will send him cookies. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, with this topic, I want to go back over to you, Michelle, and ask, if a faith leader comes to you and says, well, how do I support someone with OCD? Or how do I make my space more inclusive to someone with OCD? What do you suggest to them? And I think there's always this line, because we want to encourage folks to be supportive and also not reinforce OCD or offer reassurance and all of those things. But what are some of the things that you typically recommend?
So first of all, if they came and asked me, I'd be like, yes, I'm so excited that you're here. No, I think that, you know, it obviously depends on the amount of time a person can devote to this. But a great place to start is like, just learn a little bit about the OCD pattern and cycle and how it works, you know, and you can do it by go visit the International OCD Foundation website, or you want to go a little bit, you know, bigger, kind of come to one of these live streams and learn more, or go to the Faith and OCD conference. You know, but also I think, like, if they know that they've got somebody who has OCD in their community, now the person may or may not be open to this, but saying, hey, I'd really like to help and learn more. You know, is there a way I could be of help? Like, could your clinician give me any tips? Like, I've done that for people's, you know, faith leaders before, and shared some information that they needed to know. You know, or finding somebody who is an OCD specialist who might be willing to help to educate them, right? And sort of like the basics. What do you need to know? You need to know in general what OCD is, and then I think secondarily what accommodation is, because I think that one of the biggest things, right? Faith leaders get called upon all the time for their input, their consult, and they can end up being huge providers of accommodations, reassurance, you name it. They could end up, you know, doing it. And I think that learning what it is that they might be getting caught up in and how to get themselves unstuck would also be really helpful to learn.
No, thank you, Michelle. I think that's so important, and I do. So a lot of the work I do is around like training clergy in different spaces and like talking. And I always say the role of clergy is so important. And I'm always like, please, we don't want to reassure, but you can affirm and you can show up for people and you can help them, you know, step forward through your own theological lens with meaning, or talk to them about what does it look like to take a leap of faith while doing these really challenging exposures. And it's so interesting because I know I'll say for me in the past, it's tempting when someone comes to you and says, well, can you just give me this theological answer and I'll feel better? And gosh, you just want to make them feel better. And also, you know that OCD is going to poke a hole in whatever that thing is in 2 seconds, and that it's not helpful. And the story that Val shared earlier about, gosh, someone just being with her and seeing her and listening to her thoughts, it wasn't about reassuring you that everything was okay. It was just about showing up and affirming what you were feeling. And I think that's such a beautiful, I want like every faith leader to hear that story from you, Val, that it's not about reassuring or fixing. It's just sometimes just about being there in the struggle. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mary, great question. So we a couple different layers here. So Father Thomas Santa has wonderful resources specific to the Catholic faith, and he does some great work around this. Caitlin Claggett Woods also is doing some awesome work specifically on training Catholic priests in this area, and we're going to have both of them at our Faith and OCD conference in November, doing kind of some specifics on this. But if you send me an email after too, I'm happy to kind of put you in contact, because there is some great work being done specifically in the Catholic area. And I know Caitlin is training a lot of priests in Canada in really beautiful, awesome ways. And yeah, Father Thomas Santa does a lot of scrupulosity work for the Catholic community, has a book, and just does some wonderful, wonderful things. Okay, so Val, I want to head back over to you, and I can't believe that it's almost 8 o'clock. These conversations go so incredibly fast. So I actually want to ask, what gives you hope about the future of mental health conversations in faith spaces?
A few things, but I think too, especially when I'm seeing people opening up more to even having these kind of conversations within the church body, I think I get hope when I see younger generations kind of pushing it a little bit forward, where some of the older generations are more reluctant. Uh, I just get hope in knowing that through our relationship with Christ, that's where ultimately our hope lies. That He's the one that has given us this cross to bear, so He's going to help us carry it as long as we're obedient and open. But all of those kind of things. But I think too, just having the conversation. We have got to start somewhere, because statistics will show us that somebody that you might not have OCD or any kind of mental anxiety, but when you go to church or your faith community, look to the left, look to the right, look to the right, look to the left. There's going to be someone within that body that's sitting in the pews in silence. That doesn't change the fact that they're members of that congregation. And we should, as believers, feel we have a safe space to land also, that we're part of the flock. And just like Jesus left to go find the one out of the 100 and left the 99, sometimes our ministries are going to have to do that. We just can't be afraid to move forward. So when I see classes and when I see podcasts and I see people talking and conferences and all that, that's where the hope lies, But ultimately, the hope lies in Him. With giving us what we need.
Thank you, Val. That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And I also love Matt. Thank you for advocating in the chat for, Mary, please go to the IOCDF Faith and OCD resource page that we created with an entire Catholicism section. I don't know why that was not my first thing that I said, but ironically, Father Santa and Caitlin Claggett Woods created that for us. So it all fits together. But y'all, please check that out. And we're in the process as an Action Council of actually revising those resources right now so that they continue to stay up to date for all of you. And at Stick with the Ick, we actually just started a Catholic support group too, and a Catholic affinity group that Caitlin's leading, which is kind of neat also. I want to, in these last couple of minutes to you, I know we didn't get through all of our questions, but just go over to Michelle and ask any words of hope that you would like to leave with this community, or what brings you hope in this conversation right now?
I think just really just that we're talking about it more. Val, it really rings true. I don't remember people talking about mental health when I was growing up. It was not something, and resources. I mean, even just in the years that I've been involved in the OCD community, just seeing more and more resources. But I also have to say what has brought me some hope is some of the ways that I've seen certain faith communities responding to the needs of their community. Like, I have to tell you, like, one of the people who found me and came for treatment came from a community that we might have traditionally thought wouldn't have embraced mental health. But she was told in no uncertain terms by her, faith community, you are going to go and you are going to get help, and we are 100% going to be behind you. And I think that that's a huge part of the reason that this person was able to thrive, because this is such, faith can be such an important part of our lives. And if you know that you've got your community behind you and they're talking about and they're saying, we believe in you getting treatment, like, wow, that gives me a lot of hope when I see that happening, that people are being encouraged by the places that mean so much to them to go and get help and support.
I think, Michelle, what a beautiful thing. And to be able to see communities that, again, we wouldn't typically expect to be advocating and encouraging folks to seek treatment. There is so much hope in that. So much hope in that. Thank you.
What brings you hope, Katie?
Oh, thank you, Val.
Let's interview Katie.
Honestly, this community, I think so often about my own journey, and I was talking to someone earlier today, and they said, how did you get into faith and OCD work? Have you been doing this now for they were like, oh, it's been like 10 years. I'm like, no, it's been like 4. And 5 or 6 years ago, I was in the roughest place of my whole life with my OCD, and I didn't think I was going to make it. And I felt so much shame as a minister and just all of this. And treatment saved my life. And then this community really saved my life and continues to give me hope. And I feel so humbled to get to work and be a part of this community every day, and to watch so many people of such beautiful, diverse faith backgrounds support one another and lift one another up and take leaps of faith in treatment. And that gives me hope, I think, in my own journey to continue to step forward and also to continue to do this work. And for me, it's also about educating faith leaders. And last week I got to go and do some recording for a seminary that is starting to incorporate faith, OCD, and scrupulosity into their coursework for seminary students. And that has been a dream of mine for a really long time. And even just being in that space and seeing leaders in the field want to know about OCD and want to know about scrupulosity, and just seeing where this can go, just all of the hope. So that's a long way of saying it has been a long journey, and I'm just thankful to and hopeful because of everybody here, and just to get to do this work alongside you. So thank you. Thanks for asking, Val. Thank you. I love y'all, and I love everyone here in the chat, and you all are so wonderful. Oh, Emily, it was your first live stream. We're so glad that you were with us here. Welcome to this community. You are family now, and we are just really glad you're here. Matt, thank you for the kind words. You have helped me and so many in our journeys too, so thank you. Y'all, as we close out tonight, I want to say that this live stream is one of many. There are things happening all the time with the IOCDF. There are live streams that will continue the rest of this week. And the IOCDF is a donor-supported nonprofit organization. So if you are enjoying this programming, please consider making a donation at iocdf.org/donate. I also want to put in a shameless or not so shameless plug that the IOCDF Faith and OCD conference is happening on November 19th. And if you enjoyed tonight, please put that on your calendar. We don't have the official save the date stuff up yet, but please mark it on your calendar now, block out the day. You're going to hear from Michelle and from Val and from so many amazing speakers sharing their experience and their expertise. And we would absolutely love to have all of you there, because as we just shared with Hope, you know, this community, we find hope in one another, just in getting to be together and getting to share stories and to be our authentic selves. And what a beautiful thing. So thank you all so much for being with us in the chat. Thank you, Michelle and Val and Emilio behind the scenes. Just what a beautiful night, and love to all of you. Yeah, Val, go ahead and close us out.
I was just going to say yes. Thank you, everybody. Everybody stay encouraged, stay blessed, because you're worth it. You know, and this too shall pass. We always manage to get through it because we know where to turn to, whatever faith it is.
Beautiful. Thank you, Val. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.